Hi and welcome to A British Audiophile. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Taryn. Acoustics is an established brand here in the UK. It's well known for its accessible range of loudspeakers, and for good reason. Whenever I've heard them at shows or dealer demos, I've always been struck by the value for money that they represent. I haven't formally reviewed one on this channel as yet, but I hope to rectify that in coming months if at all possible. A few years ago, Acoustics ventured into some more expensive range of speakers. The Concept 500 floor stander retails for the best part of £4,000 here in the UK. And the Concept 300 stand mount with stands retails for just under £3,000. And that's what I'm going to be looking at today. There's a lot of little clever design touches to this speaker which I'll get into. So let's see how I got on. The Acoustic Concept 300 retails for £2,499 without the stands, or £2,999 with the stands in the UK. It's an attractive speaker available in three coloured and combined real wood, veneered, high gloss finishes: black with rosewood, silver with ebony, white with oak. The Concept 300 is deceptively large. Front on, at first glance, you'd be forgiven for thinking that it's just a compact two-way design with nicely curved edges. Measuring just 355mm high, that's 14 inches, 200mm wide, that's 7.8 inches. It's only when you look off axes that you realise how deep it is. 400mm, that's 15.7 inches. This is very clever, and I wish more manufacturers would do this. It makes the speaker as non-imposing as they could get away with. The front baffle houses a 28mm, just over 1 inch soft dome tweeter and 165mm 6.5 inch dope paper mid-woofer crossing over at 2500 Hz. The rear has two sets of high quality speaker binding posts to facilitate bi-amping. You can adjust the treble output to suit your taste or acoustic environment by plus or minus half a dB. Move the jumper to the right for a half dB increment, or remove it altogether for a half dB attenuation. The bottom of the Concept 300 has an isolation base that bolts onto a steel tripod stand that Acoustics calls tensegrity. Not only does it provide a very stable and secure base, it contributes to the minimalist architectural design aesthetic. Acoustics have gone to quite a lot of trouble with the Concept 300 design to reduce unwanted vibrations from various different sources. If left unchecked, unwanted vibrations and resonances can potentially add distortion and muddy the sound. Acoustics claim that they can identify cabinet resonances down to a microscopic level, enabling them to use point-to-point bracing techniques exactly where required without unnecessarily eating into the internal cabinet volume. The cabinet itself is a sandwich construction made from 3 layers of MDF, separated by 2 layers of non-setting gel that Acoustics calls dual gel core. Its intention is to convert the high frequency cabinet vibrations into heat dissipated within the gel. Perhaps the most innovative feature other than the tensegrity stand is the way that the speaker couples to the stand itself. Integrated into each 14.5 kg or 32 pound speaker is an isolation base. The mass of the speaker is suspended on 4 internal springs. The isolation base is then securely bolted to the base plate of the tensegrity stand. The system is designed to reduce vibrations from the speaker reaching the stand and vibrations from the floor transmitting through the stand to the speaker. Although it's possible to buy the Concept 300 without the stand, I think the stand itself is a very big selling point on this particular speaker. Don't underestimate the value of a good quality stand. There's more to it than meets the eye. Perhaps that's a topic for a future video. The tensegrity stand provides a very secure and stable base for the Concept 300. Remember, the speaker's actually bolted onto the stand, so it's not going anywhere. And because the base is quite wide at the bottom, it's very difficult to knock the speaker over. You have to be doing something very silly. I think the downside is, for those of you who have small children running around, the steel cables that hold the load-bearing steel rods in place are potentially a trip hazard. I'd go as far as to say that they're dangerous if you've got children running into them at any particular speed. And for those of you who don't like the minimal design aesthetic, you can place the bottom of the speaker, the isolation base, directly onto your stand. But this is a fairly deep speaker and it's also quite heavy, so make sure the top plate of your stand is big enough to accommodate it, and the speaker stand itself is heavy enough to lower the center of gravity so that the speaker doesn't topple over too easily. I hooked up the Concept 300 to my Hagel H160 and I almost immediately realized what Acoustics were going for with the voicing of this particular speaker. What you have to consider is that it's as much a lifestyle product as it is a hi-fi product. Now, I don't mean that in any kind of disparaging manner. It's a fine sounding speaker in its own right, but it's aimed at a segment of the market where even your regular stand mount speaker may not fly in the living space due to the chunkiness of the cabinet or the chunkiness of the speaker stand. What would you do if you were voicing a speaker to work well in a minimalist environment that's likely to be acoustically lively with a lot of hard surfaces and minimal soft furnishings? Well, you'd roll off the high frequencies because there's very little high frequency absorption happening within the room itself. And that's exactly what Acoustics have done with the Concept 300. Yes, you've got the jumpers where you can adjust the treble by plus or minus half a dB. It's a very clever move on Acoustics' part, but even with the jumper in the plus half dB setting, this is a speaker that's on the rolled off side of neutral. There's plenty of bass weight, really good mid-bass punch, and a decent amount of bass extension, despite the fact that Acoustics only specify the Concept 300s as digging down to 55 Hz. But Acoustics are known for being very conservative in their specifications, and you can substitute the word honest for conservative here. In fact, it gets me wondering how other manufacturers arrive at their bass extension figures, probably by measuring the in-room response, placing the speaker right in the corner and measuring the minus 10 dB point. Regardless, I don't think the bass is going to really disappoint people with this speaker. It's not the last word in bass speed, and it's similar in the mid-range. Notes don't stop and start as quickly as they do on my Proact Response 1 SCs. That means with the Concept 300s, the leading edges of notes and the decay structures aren't quite so clear. There's plenty of body to the notes, but the lower mid-range is slightly more emphasized, giving the speaker a little bit of warmth, and the upper mid-range a little bit recessed, and that's the area where you get a little bit of bite and excitement. That gives an overall tonal characteristic that's very smooth. What the hell am I doing? It gives a very smooth overall tonal characteristic. Micro details are a little bit more glossed over than perhaps the class leaders. I don't want to give you the impression for a second that this isn't a good sounding speaker. It is a good sounding speaker. Soundstage width, soundstage depth and imaging are all respectable, but it has a particular tonal characteristic. It reminds me in a lot of ways of the Buchar S400. That's a speaker that also is a little rolled off at the top end and not the last word in resolution and detail, but not far behind the class leaders as well. And it's a similar case with the Concept 300. It's for those of you who want something a little bit more forgiving of recordings and of your environment and aren't necessarily chasing the last word in detail and resolution. I had the jumpers set on the back of the Concept 300s to lift the treble by half a dB. I also had the speakers slightly wider apart so I could toe them in a bit more aggressively. I had the tweeters pointing directly towards my ears, and that way I got the maximum treble output. It's still a little rolled off on top, but not by much. This is a speaker that is pretty easy to drive, and it's specified correctly as a 6 ohm speaker with a minimum impedance of 4.7 ohms. And I have to commend you again, Acoustics, for specifying it correctly. There's lots of speakers out there that are specified as 8 ohms and dip well below 4.7 ohms. It will work well with a wide range of amplifiers, but I think it will work particularly well with amplifiers that are either neutral or slightly on the lean side of neutral. My Hagel H160 has that slightly lean characteristic, and it paired very well with the Concept 300s. The Yamaha AS1200's just come in for review. I only had a brief session listening with that amplifier, but again, that isn't warm sounding and worked well with the Concept 300s. It's a similar story with the Wilsington R8. It may be a tube amplifier, but with the stock tubes, it's fairly neutral sounding. Another good pairing. I didn't expect my Exposure 21 pre and 18 super monoblocks to work. They're on the warm side of neutral, and I thought it'd be too much of a good thing. But I was surprised, paired with the Concept 300, how much its mid-range opened up, its soundstage width and its soundstage depth increased. Just goes to show this speaker's capable of living with better quality amplification. Time to sum things up. For those of you who are hardened audiophiles looking for the last word in sonic performance in a speaker for around £2,500, if you're looking at the speaker without the stands, if you're looking at the speaker with the stands, it's the best part of £3,000. It represents similar value either way. A pair of stands for these speakers is likely to set you back the best part of £500. Regardless, those of you who are looking for the last word in sonic performance, I think there's a couple of other contenders you're likely to place ahead of the Acoustics Concept 300, even though these speakers aren't that far behind. But these speakers aren't squarely intentioned at you in the first place, at least that's not what I think. I think it's for those of you who are grappling with yourselves or with loved ones to try and justify having a speaker or a hi-fi system in your living space in the first place. I commend Acoustics for thinking outside the box, coming up with a very solid sounding offering and something that has an aesthetic appeal way beyond the traditional audiophile. It has a premium price, but it also has a premium finish, and it gets a recommended from this channel. Well, that's it from me and my review of the Acoustics Concept 300. If you like this video, please hit that like button, please share it. If you like what I'm doing with this channel and you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to check me out on Patreon, where I offer some Patreon-only videos and some consultancy services. But for today, for now, the British Audiophile signing off.